Double check we are live. I believe we are. All right. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Wolf. Welcome to the podcast. We've got a really, really awesome conversation today. The system is crumbling. We need the new era of finance to enter the world. A little bit of clickbait, a little bit of truth there to it. DeFi is evolving. So a lot of platforms still rely on centralized elements, and they kind of undermine a lot of the principles that we have in crypto land. Depends on where you fall. But Mavryk Network, who I'm joining with today, is they're changing it with a fully decentralized layer one blockchain. And they want to be bridging real world assets, which is something I think is going to be huge. Mr. Larry Fink from BlackRock thinks it's going to be kind of huge. He's mentioned it once or twice, maybe. And without sacrificing, trustlessness, security, they've got a bunch of cool stuff. They got a TGE coming up, which is something that I'm really excited to talk about. They have governance, automated fee burns. They really want to be about the people here. And so they're building something that's going to be scalable, resilient in the DeFi ecosystem. I'm really excited, especially about the RWA sector. So I'll probably have a couple extra questions there. But thank you so much for coming and joining us. If you could just give us a quick little introduction on you and Mavryk Network, and then we'll dive a little bit into how you got started. And the big meat and potato question I have is the thesis around RWAs and generally entering this side of the industry when could have dropped a meme coin. You could have dropped, a million different things you could have dove into. So anyways, I'll turn it over to you. Thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, of course. I mean, good about me. I have many things to say about meme coins. Cade, Wolf, thank you so much for having us. So my name is Alex Davis. I'm the founder and director of Mavryk Dynamics. We're building what's called the Mavryk Network, which is an interoperable ecosystem of tokenized RWAs with DeFi. We're going to dive into it, so I'll do it when we get there. But effectively, the reason why we started this is we saw that most post-ETH blockchains operate as oligarchies. I tend to find that layer one blockchains are parallels to nation state economies. And so really looking at the blockchain less so as just a transaction execution layer, which is what L2s are, and more so as a network economy of interoperable assets and money Legos, which is what DeFi is supposed to be. So given the what should be the low-hanging fruit of tokenization, which is yield-bearing assets, we took that and built out secondary markets and lending on top of the network as well to jumpstart. Everything's non-custodial, everything's open source. So with a plethora of assets already in our pipe, a little over $300 million in assets ready to tokenize. We're kicking ass and taking names.
I love it. Look at this. We got already a comment here on YouTube. Frankie's Travels, checking out the project. Very nice. Looking forward to the TGE. Yeah, we'll get to that here in a second, actually. I think this is going to be a pretty cool conversation because some people are like, why does it need to be there? But sometimes it actually does help out the economy there. And sometimes it's necessary to keep these things rolling here. Now, so I want to jump into how you got started in the company, why you chose this industry, and any thoughts on the fact that I won't say the most powerful man in the world, but someone in the public eye that people generally will follow and say this guy's a leader in thought because he is sort of in charge of the biggest company ever that basically owns everybody in the world. He's saying the whole world is going to be tokenized, and he's got predictions on Bitcoin at $700,000. He's got some crazy turnaround just in terms of his whole philosophy on the world. And tokenizing the world has really become a mainstay, a big term that I've seen in crypto land. I believe it's going to happen. A lot of my friends do. So it's something I'm paying attention to on a personal investment level, personal interest level, as well as a professional level too. So I want to get your thesis on this.
Well, you said as the most powerful man in the world. All of a sudden, my mind went to the most interesting man in the world. The guy from Dos Equis. So yeah, him. I find it to be extremely interesting when it comes to him saying everything will be tokenized because we say tokenized today, right? But in that same light, it's almost like what, we're not that old to have it be our parents because it's like more of a Gen Xer thing where it's like, okay, well, everything's going to be digitized. When it comes to I bought my first cassette tape was the No Doubts. I can't remember the name of it, but the one with Don't Speak. And that was on cassette. That was when everything was still analog, right? And then we started moving to CDs. And then all of a sudden I was like, okay, well then Napster comes about. And then you get MP3 players. And then you get, and then you got streaming and everything became digital. We use tokenization because we're still from this nascent field of blockchain. It's still pretty young. But effectively, when it comes to tokenization, it's just the digitization of ownership. everything will be digitized, whether it's ownership over Pokemon cards or the titles.
Hold on, I may be losing you here.
Your phone
Yeah, a
number.
bit.
It doesn't matter. It's all going to be. I think I cut out there for a second.
Yeah, it went
Are you
robot
there?
mode, and there we go. You're back now.
Uh, yeah, so I think everything is simply going to be by tokenization. I think we just simply mean that we're going to have digital records of ownership as opposed to analog ones, or not really.
And I wonder with the way it's tokenized, I think I'll take the approach of the total beginner, and they go, what does that even mean? How would you begin to tokenize something like real estate, for example? Like, what does that even mean to tokenize a house, and who is the beneficiary there? How does it help the average layman who's like, okay, cool, tokenize the world makes sense. I want to jump in. Could you give the quick breakdown on that side of things, especially for the beginner investor who's just hearing about RWAs?
Yeah, so when we talk about tokenizing a house, it really depends on the type of investment asset that it is. Is it a multifamily housing structure that has 100 homes in it, and you're just buying an investment into it like a REIT? Or are we talking about a single family home that you're going to put your family in and live in, or as an investment property where you buy the whole home outright as one thing? So if you do tokenize the deed and transfer that ownership, or do you tokenize the almost like shares of a REIT in that side? So on the single family home, on the deed side or the title, it's really, when you buy a home, it takes about 30 days to close, as opposed to seconds. And so if the title deed was tokenized, you literally can just, well, we built OTC contracts actually that can facilitate this. You just put the title deed into a smart contract escrow. The buyer puts the money in, it swaps, and you're done, right? So, I
Mm.
mean, if you think about title insurance in case there's something against the title or whatever, you could literally build a system where it says, okay, listen, if there's going to be some form of lien that's on the title, it would be on chain. You don't have to have title insurance for that in a way. Um, because if it's capable of being put into the smart contract, there's no lien. So you can cut down your transaction times or the closing times for a single family home from 30 days to seconds. And imagine if you think about then the costs that go into closing on a house as well.
Well, I was going to say that, but also if someone says, okay, it can't be secure if it takes 4 seconds, the reason it takes 30 seconds is because of XYZ that needs to be checked off. How could you possibly do it in 5 seconds? What am I missing? So what do you say to that when someone asks that? Because I feel like that's reasonable. You're closing on whether you bought it outright or you're paying $100,000 or $10,000, whatever your entry point is and whatever you're paying into it. If they're like, this is way too short, how can you possibly trust this? What do you say to that?
I mean, simple. You could either send an email to someone in New York or you could send a carrier pigeon. Is it email any less secure than a carrier pigeon?
That's a good answer right there. That's a correct. That actually might be the best answer I've ever heard for that topic. That is a one. I'm writing that down. It's a very cool visual. Very
Yeah, I mean,
nice.
you get these things like my great grandfather bought some land, I don't know, 100 something years ago, and that got passed down to his sons, and that got passed down to my grandfather's children. So like my mom and her four siblings. And along the way, now there's like 10 owners of this plot of land where you can build like 5 houses, but part of it got sold along the way. It's all in this analog paperwork that's sitting in some office that, it's still not recorded digitally. So I can't log into
Wow.
we're trying to figure out what's going on there. And everyone I talk to is like, you know what? You just have to hire a lawyer who's physically going to go into the office and figure out what's going on uh, with that plot of land and ownership and what's going on with it, right? On the flip side, I had a conversation earlier this week with a Latin American consulting firm they're basically building a smart city, and I was like, why don't you just tokenize the deeds from the get-go? Don't have any paperwork when it comes to this. Just start on, if you're building a new city that's supposed to be a smart city and you can walk anywhere or use public transportation, 15 minutes you're anywhere, and you're all these different systems for being more efficient, like why would you still use paper for
Wow.
anything?
What did they say?
They're blown away. So it's
Wow.
the real world is getting there. Less so as like, oh, look at these crypto bros, they're like popping meme coins out, not backed by anything. And then they start to see like, oh wait, this is just a digital record of ownership. It's just better tech. And
Mm.
that's where Larry Fink is spot on that this is going to win.
Wow, that is powerful. And I think the reason I started with real estate is because I feel like it's one of the better visuals that people can get when they're like, okay, fractionalize what? They're like, if you brought in stable coins, for example, as your first entry point to RWAs, I feel like it's a little bit more complicated. because I feel like stable coins are slightly complicated to the average person. They're like, so you print it, you mint it, it stays the same, it's pegged to what? And I feel like it's a bit more complicated. So I feel like the real estate one is just a great visual. And that was such an excellent walkthrough there. That was very, very cool. So I'm curious here on, so a lot of crypto people come in and the majority of them are here to make money. They want to buy something, either sell for more or find opportunities. They're here because we're in the land of innovation. It makes sense. So is there secondary markets for these kind of things? I know you guys have been building. You guys actually have built multiple things now at this point. So if you could actually open up a little bit about that, and then also would love to hear if you have any thoughts on the past point about secondary markets and how you think about trading these real world assets, if that's even something that's supposed to be done with this asset class, or if it's really meant to be going into a different direction.
Yeah, so it really depends in terms of, there's multiple questions in there. And so when it comes to trading real world assets, there's, just remind me down the line. People are like, oh yeah, we're going to bring liquidity and we're going to tokenize everything. There's going to be all the liquidity. It's going to be like Bitcoin. It's like, okay, you tokenize a $50,000 house. There's not going to be $1 million of trading volume, right? It's a pretty common misconception about RWAs. The thing is though, is that some assets are going to be, natively more susceptible to having liquidity, and some assets simply won't. So if you have $1 billion in treasuries, that'll be more liquid. If you have $100,000 single family home that 500 investors own, it's not going to be so liquid. So that's why we developed a product that we haven't exactly announced, but I'll talk about here, called Equities. And so we actually built for that 3 non-custodial, so we never hold users' funds, or the platform actually never holds users' funds, marketplaces for RWAs. One of them is more adept at low liquidity transactions. So it's basically an AMM, or proactive market maker, for RWAs. Users can, or stakeholders can go in. You can provide single-sided or double-sided liquidity, meaning you can stake stable coins to be used there, or you can stake RWAs to be used there to facilitate trades. And so you got liquidity on both sides for buys and sells, but those are for lower level, like let's say lower volume trades, so to say. You can't buy or sell 10% of the supply immediately in there, right? It's not geared for that. We also then built an on-chain order book DEX. So imagine Binance, but all the orders are on-chain. And again, it's designed more for security than it is for high frequency trading, because the elements of RWAs is less so the high frequency trading of these things. They're naturally liquid, so it's more about security than anything else. But you can put a block order for buying up 30% of the asset at let's say $10, and if people want to sell, then they can sell into that. And we also built OTC markets, which is effectively just smart contract escrow. So you could own 50% of something and say, hey, you know what, like I'll sell, like you can buy up as much as you want at $25 or make an offer. So that's what we did on the liquidity side. In the markets today, there are not many platforms that have secondary markets for RWAs, especially when it comes to the non-custodial side. If you have centralized exchanges or custodial exchanges that do, you have a couple platforms that have built effectively walled gardens. And so it's like, hey, come buy my RWAs and you could use that here. And it's like, okay, but then why even put it on blockchain if you don't allow me to put it in my own wallet? You don't allow me to sell it in a secondary marketplace that's not from the first platform. You don't allow me to do lending. And this is another reason why we started an L1, besides for the problems with L1s in the market, but that's a whole different podcast.
Yeah, that definitely is.
Yeah. So there seems to be 2 problems in the RWA space. It suffered from a lot of different misconceptions, and people being like, oh, I'm going to tokenize a house as an NFT and it's not a security. I'm like, it doesn't work that way. At least now, at least at the current moment. So what we noticed is that you had some platforms that provided the ability for the primary issuance and purchasing of RWAs, but no lending. And then other platforms that facilitated a secondary market, but no, I'm sorry, that they did a primary offering. I'm trying not to name names because there's just, we're here to build together. A rising tide raises all ships, but there are gaps in the market. So what I noticed is that there are platforms that have tokenized lots of homes, and they had some lending that was pretty not developed, but no secondary market. And if there is a secondary market, it doesn't seem to, well, we'll get there. And then there's other platforms that facilitate secondary lending, but then there's secondary trading, but there's no lending.
Mhm.
And so it's like, okay, one side's got one side's got the other, but there's not, if you go and buy a house, there's two things you want to do if you buy an investment property or an investment of some kind. Down the line that you want to sell it at some point, most likely, right? Maybe you keep it forever and your kids get it, but then they want to sell it. But at some
Sure.
point, that needs to be potentially sold. And secondly, most investments you borrow against, whether that's Bitcoin or a house or
Yeah, absolutely.
a rental property or whatever it is. You take leverage, especially against these assets that go up in value over time. So if you don't have both, then all you did was digitize this asset with extra steps. Just put it into a central company. So if we're going to use blockchain and make things more efficiently, then you have to provide those two stepping stones to get that moving. And that's what we did with Equities on one side and Maven on the other. Maven being a lending bank that now will facilitate RWAs.
Wait, so can I ask a question? So do you think the reason that they don't possibly is to cover their bases, to make sure they're getting enough money to make it through? Like, is it possibly, again, we're not calling one out, but is it possibly it's a strategic leaving out of something in the same way that, Apple will, or Sony, it just comes to mind. I use Sony cameras, and they will purposely leave out one feature. I know it every time they upgrade so that you're always waiting for the next thing, and it's never perfectly done. There's always one thing you're like, are you literally kidding me? Like, what do you mean this camera doesn't have in-camera stabilization? It's the top camera in the market. How do you not include it? And they're like, oh, the next one we will. And so they do that, and I feel like it's a little bit on purpose. We don't have to call anyone out, but is it possible that there's strategic, thought around that, or is it just they're just not doing it?
I think there's just more of a focus on what they want to do. Like they're not looking at building an economy of assets. They're more of interoperable assets. They're looking at focusing on tokenizing and selling as much as they can, where they make their fees. Where we're also coming from the layer one angle. So Equities focuses on secondary trading and tokenization, or tokenization and secondary trading, right? And Maven focuses on lending, and Mavryk focuses on making sure it all works together, right? And
Okay.
so there's not that umbrella of making sure that everybody, like, don't build in silos, use this token standard and work together and actually push this out. And so what we're doing is not like leaving things out or calling people out or being like that. I mean, those two platforms that I'm thinking about are actually on different chains as well, and they're not major chains. So it's like, okay, well then why are you on those chains anyway, right? So if we're going to go to some obscure chain to build out an ecosystem of interoperable assets, why don't we just build the chain as well and do it the right way from the ground up?
That's a good way to think about it. I think that's probably the best way that companies are made. I feel like in crypto, the benefit we get is we are in the land of innovation. Unfortunately, when things start to work, we start to see people make things for the sake of making them, not so much because there's actually a need that they saw and they said, I'm going to go fix it. And so I think that's why it's cool here. One thing you mentioned, there's $360 million, just a casual 360 mil in RWAs that you got in your pipeline. What kind of assets? We talked a lot about real estate, but what assets are you prioritizing, in addition to real estates? And then how do you ensure quality and transparency as you guys start to scale as well? Could you talk a little bit about the scale size? Like, I'm not sure how that would work once you start to get way more investors, a lot more interest. Talk to me about what that process is going to look like.
Well, that's actually really interesting because now I want to be like, let me share my screen and walk you through it. We'll save
I'm
that
happy
for
to.
another
Do you
part.
want to? Okay, we can do that. We can do it on a follow-up.
We can like tease it and then let
Okay. Sounds
like
good.
get the oh, this is going to be a little bit of a dirty line. So look, the interesting thing about that is that we're here to tokenize effectively. I'm trying to think which side of the answer to the question to answer on this one. We're here to tokenize. Well, it's my theory that yield bearing assets are the future of tokenization, at least in the low hanging fruit of tokenization. Whether it's for sophisticated investors, retail investors, family offices, etc. The key is yield bearing assets. So when it comes to real estate, that's a very easy one, right? Hey, buy 10% of this house, get paid 10% of the dividend yields. Buy 15% of this hotel and get part of their dividend yields and like a free stay, depending on your tier of ownership or whatever it is. But there's many other things that provide yields that most investors don't have access to today because IPOs are effectively, private equity pump and dumps on retail investors today, and also that most retail investors are priced out of the market. So it's okay, maybe you can buy a home. I mean, millennials are screwed on this, and Gen Z is screwed on this. Like, in major cities, the average price is $1 million.
Oh yeah, I was in Seattle, and I was just A couple years ago, I was looking at the houses. I was like, you guys cannot be serious. It's like, it's cost how much to buy this house? You have to have how much income to even qualify? I was like, I need to make $500,000 if you even wanted to get me in this like $50,000 house. Are you kidding me? It was crazy.
No, but I mean, I grew up in Los Angeles, and the average house there is at least over 1 mil, which means you need at least 200K as a down payment. And
Wow.
outside of certain circles, most people don't have that kind of cash on hand. So you're priced out of everything. And by the way, that's why I think people are flocking to meme coins,
Mm,
and all these like high risk investments where it's basically
yeah.
gambling because they don't have anywhere to really put their money. So that's on that front. But imagine all the other things that you can buy into today if you tokenize it, because it reduces the friction and cost of, let's call it, a public offering as opposed to an IPO. So there, we covered real estate, multifamily housing, also real estate, hotels, a form of real estate, but still a business. Um, but then there's also Bitcoin miners. Most Bitcoin miners around the world are privately held. And
Yep.
so imagine this. You like, okay, there's this whole thing that's like Bitcoin L2s. You can stake your Bitcoin, you can secure a network and yada yada. Hasn't worked so well yet. But imagine if you could just like, hey, buy 10% of this Bitcoin mine and get Bitcoin dividends on chain in wrapped Bitcoin.
All right. Talk
Unwrap
to me
if
more
you
about
want or
this
choose to.
because I love the miners. So talk to me more about this.
I mean, imagine if you bought in a Bitcoin mine makes 100 Bitcoin a year, let's just say, right? Throwing numbers out there, and you own 10% of it. So you earn 10 Bitcoin a year as a dividend. The same way that you'd earn like $10,000 a year if it produces $100,000 a year, right?
Okay. What are the opportunities here for
So
Bitcoin mining RWAs? Do you guys have any currently in the mining world? And also, if there have there been examples in the past where it's failed and it's also been successful? Because this is now you've like really tripped my my passion alarm. I love the Bitcoin mining industry, and so I'd love to hear if you have any thoughts on it. If there. I don't know if this developed as far as other sides of the industry, but
we have an open conversation with a group in, I think it's North Texas in Oklahoma, for tokenizing the privately held Bitcoin mines, but
wow.
it's a mostly they go public. If you think about Riot, Marathon, Mawson, etc., they've gone public, and they still don't pay Bitcoin dividends. They pay. I don't even know if they
Oh,
pay
okay.
dividends actually, off the top of my head, but it's owning it. You got a lot more flexibility in the private equity market, so you can pay. You take that Bitcoin, you wrap it and put it on the chain. You can automate the payments to 10,000 investors, and it's just a number. It could be a million. So there's something really interesting there on the Bitcoin mining, and then there's also others as well. Bonds, treasuries. That's already being done with Ondo. There are what are called insurance-linked securities. So you can buy like risk that's not correlated to Nasdaq. Where like China releases a AI that's doesn't seem that's actually better than ChatGPT, and then the market tanks, but it's non-correlated assets in the market produces like 12 to 15% a year. Essentially, imagine you have $100 million in car insurance risk. So these companies, they usually get reinsurance out to Cayman, but then they sell that reinsurance out to like a reinsurance bank or ultra high net worth individuals. And that 100 million needs to be sitting in someone's account in order to back up the claim in case there's a payout. Now they can invest that money as well, so that's something. But um, all the you pay your car insurance bill, doesn't matter whether Nasdaq is down or not. You pay your car insurance bill, right? And that goes to
Yeah.
the insurance company. They take a cut. Most of it goes to the reinsurance company. They take a cut. Then it goes back again for reinsurance. You should watch The Laundromat. It's a wonderful movie. You can actually now start like,
Okay. I'll watch that.
um, well, it's about kind of like insurance fraud and how that system has worked. But
Perfect. I've
again,
been
putting
looking
that
to get
on
into that
chain,
business.
but putting that on chain again adds a level of transparency where you can't just like, where's the
Absolutely.
money, right? But now, let's say that they take in $10 million in car insurance payments monthly. They pay their reinsurers, pay their insurance. Now, the insurance-linked security holder earns those car insurance payments, or at least minus the fees along the way, right? For the reinsurance, the main broker and the insurance companies along the way. But now you can potentially earn risk. You can own risk and earn from it.
When you risk, that is
Yeah,
very
I wouldn't
interesting.
tokenize. I wouldn't tokenize, like home, like single family homes in California right now. But
Yeah. Yeah.
that it's just from a regulatory standpoint, it's terrible what's happened there. I grew up there, and like parts of my like where I grew up are just absolutely decimated. But good luck getting the insurance payment now.
Yeah, I have no idea how they're going to get around that. That was insane to see unload in real time. I mean, we've seen it happen all over the world multiple times now. Like, like Australia, I remember Australia was burning, and everyone, but it was so far away that people were kind of like, "Oh, it's terrible," but like we can't even fathom it when you're in America. But then for it to happen in Los Angeles, people are like, "What just happened? Like, what do you mean the whole entire state's on fire?" And it brought a lot of people to. I'm hoping at least
It was
people will
urban.
start. Yeah.
That was the
Okay.
problem.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. That's right. That's right. I think I'm hoping at least for a lot of people because we spend a lot of time in crypto where the average person is just thinking about what's next, what can I buy next. But some industries impact the world in a way that is pretty intense. And yes, meme coins are going to impact the world, but in a different way. I think RWAs, DPINs, especially when a bear market comes, it's really the big reason I found RWAs and DPINs to be interesting, because I said, wait a second, these industries, while they may falter in the bear market just like everyone else, are going to have legs that the other industries and sectors don't, because just of the nature of their sector is just different. It's an entirely different part of crypto. And I think it's really interesting. And I'm hoping at least it's the avenue that people go down especially if they're more professional, they're looking to enter the industry, but not, buy into a meme coin on DEX tools kind of thing. That's not really their interest, but they want to get in, have some money, but have it be legitimate. Like you were saying, you can sign and get a house done in 5 seconds. That doesn't make it a meme coin. It just means it's better and more efficient. So that's a really, really cool concept. I'm curious, you guys mentioned you guys were trying to do an everything all in one company, which is awesome. I think that's what it needs to be. How do you guys see, I guess, the world of RWAs going? And as that happens, I guess, how do you guys plan to adjust and pivot and be flexible in that way? Do you see any upcoming trends in the future that you're preparing for? I just want to get a little bit of thoughts, sort of in a vision casting way, what's coming over the horizon.
What's really interesting, because Mavryk actually is a pivot.
There you go.
So when you say like what do you have on the horizon, potentially pivots and whatnot, we started as the platform that we built, Maven Finance, as a lending DAO, originally on the Tezos blockchain that back in the day was supposed to be the STO chain. And then once we realized that they were going down the route of NFTs and not DeFi or RWAs or anything like that, that's again a whole separate conversation. I used to be, I didn't even say this, I don't think, in the beginning. I used to be the former chief innovation officer for the Tezos blockchain's Middle East office.
Very cool.
So,
did not know that.
Yeah, so Maven was actually the first, and I still believe till this day, only fully VC-backed DeFi app on the chain. And so we decided to pivot, not launch there, and actually expand into building our own chain and then also building equities. Maven's built as a DAO. So once we release this beast, it's completely not, it works like a co-op, right? A cooperatively operated banking platform, credit union, building society, depending where you are in the world. The token holders effectively operate the DAO. Everything is on chain with Maven. It's not a DAO up front and the dev team in the back. It's all the revenue flows into a treasury that a decentralized board of directors called the satellite nodes controls. In order to run a satellite node, you must own and stake the tokens and run some hardware. They also provide the data feeds for decentralized Oracle, all of the upgrades. So if you need to upgrade from V1 to V2, we can actually migrate the liquidity via DAO vote. Any person, any dev team, any dev can push code to the DAO to be voted on to upgrade the system. So there is we essentially do not even essentially, we do not control Maven once it launches. We put it out there into the world and we'll contribute to it. Don't get me wrong. We'll be running nodes, we'll be doing the first upgrades, etc. But it's one of those things where it's like, you know what, let's put everything on chain. Non-custodial vault, multi-collateral lending. We've got mortgages hopefully coming up soon. So that'll be very interesting. When it comes to equities, that'll be, its own, it is technically, interestingly enough, again, we don't custody any user funds. It's all smart contracts on the chain, which also helps with the regulatory side of things, if you think about that.
So for people who are thinking, what aspect of the business is centralized in the sense that it's a business, we need to make sure things are running versus, the DAO side of things? Because a few years ago, metaverse and DAO are probably the two biggest buzzwords that everyone heard. Metaverse is unfortunately, maybe we're a little bit.
Did anything?
Nice. Yeah. I've not heard anything. I think I have no idea what that even means now, but I do think if we're going more digital, it makes sense in some capacity. We start to have more and more augmented reality experiences. But That
Awkward
kind of
moments
fell
for
apart
Mark Zuckerberg.
a little bit, and a few billions and trillions of dollars probably down the gutter. But people heard that word, and they're like, I guess it's dead. And then DAOs, same thing. I think because DAOs were so associated with NFTs, and NFTs just plundered straight down for like 3 years straight, and then have came back, but like not really. So I'm curious on when people ask that, what aspect of the industry should be decentralized and run by a DAO? Can you trust the people in the DAO? So I just would love to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so I think it's really interesting you say that because NFTs popped up. The NFTs popped up in the market because all that DeFi summer money needed to go somewhere, right? We had the ICO. First, you had like Bitcoin, then you have all these other like coins that popped out of there. Then you had Ethereum, then the ICO craze, and then the ICO money that came out of the ICO craze went into DeFi. Then that DeFi money went into NFTs. That NFT money went into meme coins. That meme coin money is now going into AI agent coins, which are not actually connected to the AI. It's like every cycle we just get stupider and stupider.
Seems like it.
So so I'm really hoping that at some point we just like completely reverse the loop there and go back to delivering value using this technology. Um, when it comes to trusting DAOs, I think one of the interesting reasons why DAOs didn't take off as much as they should is that they're hard. DAOs are actually really hard. It's a lot of people were like, oh, we're a DAO. They're like, oh, we're a DAO, we're decentralized, and you can't touch us. But then the central company behind it controls everything,
Yeah.
right? And so that's why when we built Maven, our build also took forever. By the way, it was one of those things like there's almost like too much of early liquidity building in crypto. So when you build a
Mhm.
startup and you have to wait, and then eventually maybe 7 years later you get acquired or you IPO or whatnot. With crypto, it's like, oh, we released a token and now it's now the team's rich, the VC's cashed out, and why
Yeah.
would we stay?
Yep.
Like why would you continue building in that sense? I think the misaligned incentives a lot of the times with that. And so when we set out to build Maven was to build a DAO the right way, put everything on chain, right? The revenue flows don't flow to us as a company. They flow to an on-chain treasury and on all those things that I mentioned. I mean, you should check it out, mavenfinance.io. Um, and so I think you can trust DAOs. Everything is transparent with us, obviously, except for, the satellite, they're pseudo anonymous, just like any other address. However, you could see every node's voting history. You can see how they vote on every on-chain upgrade. You could see how they sign the price feeds for the decentralized Oracle, whether they make payments out to the stakeholders who delegate their tokens to them. And if you don't like what they're doing, there's actually governance for kicking out a node. First of all, there's a high threshold for that, so you need to have a lot of people that have been like, "Hey, this guy's a dick, get him out." Um, but there's a low threshold to get in, so you don't get a cartel. And so I think that's where Maven really delivers on the ethos of DAOs, where most DAOs didn't do that. They just put up a token, called it a DAO, and they're like,
Yep.
"This is it." Right?
Yep.
There was no real like we're supposed to be building trustless systems, and all people did were, trust me, bro, doesn't work in crypto. It shouldn't work in crypto.
Yeah. You mentioned something that was interesting. Like every cycle, it gets worse almost in terms of what the hopium run is. I think it's because we tie it to something that is legitimate, like AI. Of course, AI is dope. The things that have been built with it, we're sitting here going, okay, this is likely like level one type of behavior. A lot of this is going to end up being grifting and using something that is dope, something like AI, which I use every single day, probably 15 to 20 times. I have some kind of aspect or connection with AI where I need something done or I need help with something or organization. We love it here. We use it a lot for Wolf, but most of the things we end up seeing launched are pretty much just hype and things like that. So,
Well,
great
because
points there.
AI agent tokens are effectively glorified bots with meme coins,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And like, look, I don't think you should throw out the baby with the bathwater, in a sense, like cut out the knees on something. Your kid's not running properly when he's 2 months old. He's not
mhm,
sprinting like a cheetah, right? No, you raise your kid properly, you go through growing pains, and you eventually learn and you migrate and you evolve, um, or grow. And so one of the things is like when I look at these AI agents, people buying up all these AI agent tokens, it's the same thing. It's just this token that's on hopium of whether or not the team will do the right thing, and somehow
mm,
connect and integrate that AI agent token into what I like to call an economic, like mechanically or economically. the economic mechanics behind the token integrated with the platform, right? So if it's just this AI agent that provides a service has a token, but that service isn't connected to the rev flows or the utility isn't there in any capacity. If you're still paying with your credit card, then why do you have a token?
Mm. Wow, that is a interesting call out right there. I wonder if anyone could answer that one. Probably
Oh,
depends on who you ask.
yeah, my head of marketing wants me to start like a crypto roast show.
It's,
So
it's a great either that or an alt account where you go and you find hard questions and you see what happens when you ask it. That'd be funny. A show like that would probably get some good eyes.
but yeah, like a crypto podcast roast show where every time I meet people, I mean, I meet people from SUI and I was just like, hey, don't worry, I can come into the office and teach you how to support RWAs. And they're like, but we do. And I'm like, can you do this? And they're like, no. I'm like, so you can't.
Well, I mean, it's tough because people want to jump on whatever, because potentially it pops and it goes so nuclear that anyone who slept on it's going to feel like a fool. And I think that's a little bit of that FOMO that we feel in this industry here. Also, I was going to say, so real quick for anyone who's watching, let me share my screen here. If you haven't already, highly recommend you go check out and follow Mavryk on Twitter or X. Sorry, they're right here, Mavryk Network. Actually, right above our faces. If you're on X, you should be able to go
Is it
and
above our
click their
faces?
accounts. It is our faces. If you're on X, at least. Let's see. Yep, right above our faces. You can go and you can click into Mavryk, and you will come to their X accounts. Give them a follow, especially as they're going to have announcements coming out and stuff like that. You're going to want to make sure that you don't miss that. And you can also just bounce over here. And I know we're going to dive into it maybe on a future one, but we can just maybe give a quick little tease on kind of what their website looks like. It's very clean. If you guys are into it, if you guys like the conversation, at least I recommend you guys check it out and jump into their website, see what kind of things they offer. If there's anything that catches your eye, definitely jump in. This is one that I'm even paying attention to. This Bitcoin miners one, definitely going to be coming back to that at some point. But dude, this is really, really clean. I love the way this looks. If you want, down to spend a few minutes here. If you'd rather save it for another time, also happy to do that.
No, that's fine. I mean, if you want to head back to the Twitter for 1 second,
Let's do it. Of
we
course.
actually just announced right before this Twitter space. I mean, guys, launching a platform is hectic to say the least. So we're doing a launch party in Dubai. If any of you guys are out here,
Wow.
it'll be this Saturday in collaboration with ArtsDAO, where I'm a member of as well. And we'll be, a whole yacht party, t-shirts, 4 hours on the water, interviews, KOLs. And it'll be a fun, good time. You can meet the team. We'll be doing a team offsite as well.
All right.
So whoever's around, sign up.
Where is this? You said this is in
Dubai.
very
UAE.
nice. Okay, cool. Yeah, if you're in Dubai right now, or if you go ahead and catch the recording and you're watching this, definitely give them a follow. That way you can go to their account at least, and you'll be able to find this tweet. I believe you guys quote tweeted it.
Yeah. So
There
so
it
that's
is.
there. But we can head back to the website and go over it for a second.
Yeah,
Just
let's do it.
show you what.
All right, here we go. And also, if you would rather share, I'm also happy to let you if you want to run through it. Otherwise, if you walk me through it, I should be able to keep up.
No, all good, all good. So, if you just head down a little bit, we've got interesting new graphics. I'm a stickler for how things look. So,
Yes, so clean. This is so clean. I'm on a small little MacBook Pro screen, by the way. It's like 15 inches, so it may not be big enough to fit everything in here. I'm not sure exactly what it's set up for, but this looks great on my screen.
I mean, it's sharing it wise, it looks fine. It looks perfect. So it's, like I said, you can tokenize real estate, insurance-linked securities. You can tokenize equity and commodities. It really just depends on what it is. I just don't think that it's going to be the low-hanging fruit of tokenization. I mean,
Yep.
like when the capital markets are so efficient when it comes to trading of commodities. There are other things. It opens up new markets, but it's just again, it's not about not tokenizable. It's just not the first thing you want to tokenize, in my opinion. Bitcoin miners, I can't wait to do this because not only does tokenizing the Bitcoin miner put assets on your chain, I like to think of chains as, again, network economies. So yeah, you get this $100 million Bitcoin mine that's on your chain, right? The value of it is tokenized of the ownership on your chain. And so that ownership, it's not TVL because it's not locked in a DeFi platform, but your chain is still securing it. And that still gives some form of value to your chain. So I'm still trying to figure out how to come up with some form of economic factor similar to GDP for nation states, but for total value secured on a chain. Because there is TVS, but it doesn't I don't think it does it justice. But then every single month that Bitcoin miner pays dividends in wrapped Bitcoin on your chain, A, you get more wrapped Bitcoin on your chain, and
Mm.
B, it's driving monthly flow of value onto your chain as well. Then those people can go and take their, let's say, monthly Bitcoin dividends, go over to equities, and be like, do I want to hold this Bitcoin in my wallet? Do I want to unwrap it to regular Bitcoin? If you want to like put it into,
Mm.
put it on your ledger, or do I want to use these Bitcoin dividends to hold for 6 months, and every 6 months go buy real estate with it, and you don't have to get out of the ecosystem. So that's why I find real estate to be, the Bitcoin miners to be really interesting. Debt and bonds are really interesting because you can tokenize many things in very interesting ways, which we'll get to in, I guess, another show, on the tokenization of almost like debt or deal flow in that. And it makes it a lot simpler than owning equity in something
Mm.
is owning debt, because there's a lot of regulations that slow down RWAs. But if you own debt, you don't have to reconcile equity shareholders with a regulator on a monthly basis. So I'm working on structuring a new form of RWA where you'd be able to effectively have like a conveyor belt, in a way, like a template contract, where you're like, okay, you know what, we're issuing debt in terms of the cash flow revenues of this asset out to this token. And then you don't have to put the title into a holding company and token change the memorandum of
Mm.
understanding to say that the cap table of this company is being um, you know um, uh, not reviewed by, but it's not it's being represented by this token contract. It makes it really easy of like, hey, we're issuing this security. It's a debt piece. It represents the cash flows off this asset that is owed to the token, and you just launch these, rinse, wash, repeat, and just tokenize a ton. So you're asking like, how do you get this thing flowing?
Yeah.
It's by putting the first couple $1 billion of yield bearing assets on chain easily, and then by the way, I didn't even mention is that we're working to jumpstart the ecosystem on our chain. But everything that we built with equities and Maven, all the treasuries, all the staking, all the oracles, satellite nodes, yield farms, RWA marketplaces, all three of them, they're all non-custodial and they're all open source. So we're working with some partners that are like, hey, look, we want to tokenize some things with you, but eventually we want to do our own marketplace. I'm just like, okay, cool. We could do a white label, like all these traditional businesses, asset managers, brokers that do deals. We're like, hey, we
Yeah.
can give you your own white label solution of what's going on. You could either use your own devs and fork our code,
Mm.
or one of the options that's coming up now is a white label. It's like, hey, you can have your own marketplace. We'll run it for you. That's fine in terms of the tech of like we'll make sure that the smart contracts work and whatnot. But like all these brokers that work to sell assets, essentially broker deals, I should say. We actually did that. One of the partnerships we have for real estate and real estate based debt, specifically home equity lines of credit, out of London. So it's a brokerage firm that's turning into their own almost basically RWA marketplace, and they're using our tech in the backend. And so we did a first
Wow.
tracker token on Mavryk, and so looking forward to many more. You can
Okay,
scroll
that is
down
cool.
actually.
That was a really cool last few minutes. I was just really sponging that up. That was a really. I'm very much looking forward to that. Okay, that's very cool. We're definitely gonna have to come back at some point. And by the way, before I just before I forget, at some point, or not at some point, it's yes, at some point in this stream, I do want to touch on the TGE as well and get some of those details because I know that's gonna be coming up here as well. So, anyways, I'm here on the unlocking RWA section.
Yeah, and
Very
so
cool.
yeah, it's just a matter of like having, Maverick is a public permissionless chain, but we built a new RWA token standard for the chain that takes into account, different regulatory needs for tokens. And so once you actually have what's called a Maverick Pro wallet, which is an opt-in where you verify your wallet, you can then work with all these different DeFi protocols, or DeFi-esque protocols that allow you to go and buy. You just go to equities, click tap and buy, and you're done. Or then you can take that asset, which is already in your wallet, and then go to Maven and get a loan against it instantly. And it's really interesting because Maven's a protocol. So we've actually built a front end for equities that looks more user friendly than a DeFi app. but it actually just accesses Maven's loans in the back end. Just taps into the smart contract. It's a different front end. So there's that as well. But the world that I'm imagining in terms of like tokenized RWAs, if you thought that last bit blew your mind, is what happens when there's 1,000 RWAs tokenized on chain. Real RWAs, not like, kids trading like NFTs of their moms and stuff like that in class.
Yeah.
Or 10,000 RWAs tokenized on chain, where you have 700 hotels through Europe tokenized. And you can get now these, there's regulation involved in this, but you can get people who are like, you know what, I'm a kid in a third world country. I can get a broker dealer license here or an asset manager, whatever license is for them. It's like, I think these 10 hotels in Western Europe will perform well. I'm going to issue a smart contract that bundles these 10 hotels into a vault, locks them there, and issues an ETF token. And every single time someone buys or sells, I'll get a small little commission off of the revenue flows that come off it, especially if they put the assets in there or get a loan to put the assets in there, and sell the ETF tokens to investors who just want to own an ETF of a prepackaged amount of assets, and they get a royalty every time it gets traded. And you can have people, instead of being like content creators on OnlyFans, be ETF creators on chain.
That is going to be huge. That might be the biggest vision. That might be the biggest clear image of where this could be headed that I've seen, actually. So you've blown my mind twice now in the beginning with that visual of real estate. And that is very interesting right there. An ETF for all the top performing, parts of RWAs, whichever sector you think is going to pop, but hotels, wow, that's going to be.
I mean, it could be for anything really, right? You could say, you know what? Hey, look, like hurricanes are getting worse off the coast of Florida. I want to, have a diversified, not one RWA token. I want to have, or one building. I want to diversify into an ETF of 10 buildings, just God forbid, in case something happens to one of my buildings there during a hurricane.
Right.
Or, you know what? I'm too exposed to the East Coast property. I want property in the West Coast of Los Angeles, Seattle, Oregon, whatever, and then there's all different sorts of things that you can do. And then I actually make it really funny. I was talking to a bunch of people and I was like, well, you know what? Like you should just you could tokenize cash flows of basically anything, right? And you have all these like content creators, whether it's Instagram or OnlyFans or, TikTok, and they have almost equity in their brand or cash flows and recurring income. Tokenize that. That conversation didn't go as well as my, it was kind of hilariously funny with my wife, because she was like, wait a minute, you want to tokenize OnlyFans girls? And I was like, no, just so that they could pull out equity from the brand. And I was like, it's research. That was a funny conversation. But you start to see where this can go in the sense of, if there's cash flow, tokenize it. And not even if there's cash flow, if it's worth something. So a Max Verstappen, race worn jersey, how do you know it's real? Certificate of authenticity that anyone could have printed. Or an NFT that when you buy the helmet, comes along with the helmet and it's issued by Red Bull Racing's wallet.
Wow.
That's a form of tokenization.
Wow. That was really cool. That is a really interesting proposition, especially because now I'm starting to see, like, my brain's starting to circulate here of Larry Fink's mind when he says we're tokenizing the world. So I'm like, yeah, makes sense. I get it. Blanket term. Cool. I kind of get it. It's kind of where I've been at. But that's a very clear road and also a visual for how that can happen. Tokenizing something and then even diversifying your assets and saying, oh, this is tokenized, but I want to make sure I'm hedged over here. And even inside of my investment, there's hedges, East Coast, West Coast, like you were saying, if you're going to go into real estate. Wow. This
Europe,
now makes sense.
Developing countries in Africa, Middle East.
This is beautiful. So now this is making a lot of sense now for anyone who is looking at this and they're like, oh yeah, it's a bunch of things that are here. It's like that explanation makes this hit way harder now. So that was a very, very cool one. And by the way, I know we have the ecosystem here as well. I was going to say, is there an aspect of is there information about the TGE on the website here as well on this main page somewhere?
No, but if you scroll up to the top of the page and you go to join the testnet.
There we go.
So we haven't officially put out the PR yet, but I guess you guys, anybody watching here, will get a little bit of an inside scoop. So I guess you could say first said on Wolf, unintentionally or intentionally. You'll have to decide if you know which way that was. Um, but yeah, you can actually go and play with Mavryk now. The network's on testnet. You can download the Mavryk wallet. It's in the Google Store. It's all
Google
essentially
Store. Oh.
been us playing with it. And you can go and get some tokens in a token faucet. You can go check out the Nexus. The Nexus is really interesting because when you think about Ethereum, how do you use Ethereum, Cade? If you were to use Ethereum
I don't use very much, but if I'm using it,
or Tron or Solana or whatever, how do you use Solana?
I send it if I want to add more. If I want to use it, I'm probably
No,
swapping it to other
not the
coins that I want
token,
to trade.
not the token, the chain. How do you
Oh, how
interact
am
with
I
the
using it?
chain?
How do I interact with the chain? I don't think I would have a great answer for that. I don't think the average person would either.
You don't. The answer is like you don't really interact with the chain. What you do
Yeah,
is you use products built on top of the chain, and people are
there
like,
you go.
"Oh,
Yep.
this chain should do this chain should do that." So we built a protocol treasury as part of blockchains being network economies. It's not up yet right now, so don't click it. But
Yeah.
we built the protocol treasury where 25% of transaction fees flow into, 50% of the part of the block rewards go into there. um, there are different revenue flows and public goods, as we call them, that flow into an on-chain treasury that the validators elect the council for. And so all of that will be in the Nexus, whether it's the on-chain treasury, whether it's liquidity mining, whether it's domain names. So instead of having MV105483F2 wallet addresses, you'd have like wolf.mav. If you want to vote on governance, or a dApp store. So you can actually go and see all the different dApps that are on the chain as well. And this is our way to interact with Mavryk as a chain, as the Mavryk economy
Wow.
will be the Nexus. So it's more than just a block explorer. That's what it is at the moment, but the rest is
Mhm.
actually being put up like in the near future. So if you go back to that previous
Very
page
cool.
though, and
There
then
we
you
go.
can play around with equities and Maven. Um,
Can I click on
and
these,
so
or should we wait?
you can click on them. You can click on them. You can click on. Let's show them something on equities.
All right, here we go. It's loading now. There we go. Wow. Clean.
Yeah. The thing is, given the time, well, you can click buying, selling. If you click the sell tab there,
Wow, look at
and
that.
so you literally can just go in and be like, hey, you know what? I want to put like $1,000 USDT into this house, and you'll just start earning dividends, and the tokens go directly to your wallet.
That is. I'm gonna play around with this after. This is very, very cool. The
Yeah.
borrowing
Just ask me
section,
which
either
assets you
buying,
want to do
selling.
because we're putting liquidity still in them. We're uploading like template. It's testnet, so we're uploading template
Sure,
addresses. And then if you
sure, sure.
go to loans or borrowing, I guess.
Oh,
Sorry, the tab up there.
that's right.
So that's actually that front end for borrowing against your RWAs. This is
Wow.
not loans facilitated by Maven, by equities. This is actually the smart contracts of Maven.
Oh,
You never
okay.
need to leave.
Oh, wow. Okay, I see. I see what you're saying. That's nice. Now it's making sense. You guys are trying to do it all in one place. There's no reason to have another thing open. You want to be able to have them
Yeah.
here and have everything they need. Wow, that's
Yeah, well,
cool.
for
That is
there's
very
going to be
cool.
people, like I said, like we're here to jumpstart the economy by putting a couple $1 billion on chain, having our own tokenization, houses, so to say, and marketplaces, and also provide lending. But it's all open source, so anybody can come in and say, hey, you know what? I like the way equities does secondary markets, but we're a small startup. We're going to use the source code and build an AMM that routes the fees into and then take the treasury from Maven and make their own on-chain treasury with an AMM for RWAs. Or, Maven's vaults in the beginning are dynamic rates, they're algorithmically set. I want to do fixed rates on RWAs and then take Maven's lending controllers and modify them to produce, fixed rate loans on RWAs and build out the ecosystem. And that's why it's so important that this network economy is not a walled garden, but an open garden. So all this code will be open source.
That's going to be huge when people try and shoot you down. You can be like, check it out. Go ahead.
No,
That's
with,
really,
with
really
with pleasure
interesting.
though. With pleasure. Like if
Yeah.
people come onto the chain and start putting up like 20 more RWA platforms and more tokenization companies and more lending platforms, like all the power to them, right? We want
Mm.
to create a network economy. We're here to jumpstart it. We're not here to control it. We're here
How
to
do
build an open economy.
so in that scenario, is there a vetting process for how it goes up? Like, is there a way for people to go on and say, okay, this is something we can trust? This is like, this one is backed by Mavryk, as in like this has gone through the full vetting process. Now we've listed it, or can anyone just list anything, kind of like a meme coin, like pump fund type of situation?
No, on equities, it's going to have to be at the outset. It's going to be things that are tokenized by us.
Okay.
So that's there, and there's sections. If you go and explore the site, there's a section. Well, it's not there at that moment, but in the offering section, there's a row where we will then actually have all of the legal documentation connecting that token to the rev flow of the asset or the holding company. And so you'll actually be able to, it'll all be there of like the legality, the compliance, and all that kind of stuff. If you want to start your own RWA platform, yes, you need to talk to us just for like the KYC elements and whitelists and blacklists and that angle of things. But yeah, there's still a level of in RWAs. There's always going to be some level of permissioned environment there. But yeah, we're here to. We are. I mean, actually, to be fair, you can actually use your own security token and launch your own platform as well. Do that on your own accord. So if you want it to be fully integrated with our products, yeah, you'll have to talk to us a little bit, but eventually, we'll find a way to make that more open. But yeah, like I said, we're here to we've got some other deals in the works that are just going to, throw through. I'm saying too much on this call. Deals that will be essentially like force multiplying the amount of tokenized RWAs we're able to put onto the chain, like an RWA fund. So that is, that's what's going on. Thankfully, I will have some announcements to say after this call, if you could.
I was
We've
gonna
got some
say,
big
yeah,
things in the works.
My man is leaking alpha. I love it. I appreciate you dropping some of these as well. So in terms of the TGE, you've already released a lot of information, but what information can you share with us? Is there anything here I should keep up on the site, by the way, or do you want to zoom? Should we go?
No, we can just do us now if you'd like. Yeah.
Okay. Let's do it. All right, and we're back.
Yeah, there's a Q1 TGE. We're getting everything lined up from exchanges and market makers and marketing and PR audits and all that kind of stuff. You can follow us at Mavryk Network or Mavryk Dynamics, and Maven's got a Twitter, Equities is a Twitter. I haven't promoted that one. We haven't announced it yet.
In the next one.
Yeah, in the next one, follow us. There's going to be an airdrop. There's going to be an airdrop for verified Mavryk Pro wallets as well. So, one of the things we wanted to do is make sure that all the new, we want to get to a point where Web2 people are like, hey, you know what? I got an extra like $500 this month. I'm going to go buy some, like a piece of a house or a piece of a hotel on Equities. But regular people there's a bit of a learning curve when it comes to onboarding, right? So for the people that download so here's a bit of alpha, but it's not going to be out for a bit. For the people that download the Mavryk wallet and verify their wallet, when Pro becomes available, we'll be getting an airdrop of tokens, so they never have to worry about gas fees either for a prolonged period of time.
Okay. Even with big purchases, if they were to throw a big chunk of change.
Well, the size of the purchase doesn't matter, actually, because the transaction fee is still the same, whether you're buying $10 million worth of an RWA or $1.
Wow.
Right. And we've got super low fees also. So that's not really a problem. If at least for a really long period of time, the way that we've structured the airdrop will be good. But we've got other, I'll have to talk to our marketing about when we're going to announce our airdrop and announce our TGE and how we're going to be doing our potential token sale. Something really interesting I thought of, this is just an idea, so hold your horses, is, as I mentioned, post-ETH blockchains operate like oligarchies. The foundations keep all the money. The ecosystem suffers. The token goes live at a $6 billion valuation or whatever it is, and the VCs and the teams get rich. Everybody sells out and they move on, and then the users don't make any money. So there's no reinvestment into the ecosystem, right? And that's a really big problem economically, and we've structured a different model for that. But one of the things that we want to do is also have and that's why the airdrop's important, That's why we have a game lined up to teach you about RWAs and how to
All right.
play with them in a competition to earn L1 tokens. We've got liquidity rewards on chain operated by validators to distribute tokens to users who to bridge over liquidity and to stake it with us. But more importantly was this idea of a token sale for a treasury. Because now we have unlike some other blockchains where there is a treasury on chain, but it is centrally controlled, Mavryk has an on-chain treasury operated by validators. So one of the things that we're thinking of doing is effectively having a token sale where participants effectively deposit their contributions into this decentralized treasury as opposed to a centralized foundation. And it's almost like they're giving it to themselves, obviously with some dilution considering the tokenomics, but now the protocol owns the contributions given to it by the users. The stakeholders control that.
Wow.
As opposed to just we're going to do a token sale, an IEO, an ICO, an IDO, whatever acronym you want to come up with these days with an I in front of it. And then it's still going to that centralized team. I think one of the biggest failures is that it never went into a decentralized treasury where the stakeholders have control of those funds.
Wow. Yeah, I was going to say you can at pretty much every single one of those guys, and it's just a big pile of cash sitting there to do whatever they're going to do with it, and a lot of that money just gets burned. I think a lot of it goes into marketing, and the marketing just falls flat. They're just giving people money. It feels like sometimes.
Oh, it all goes into private foundation salaries and paying off third-party for-profit companies. There's no transparency. Hats off to Polkadot though, with like a bit of complete opposite end there of radical transparency.
Really?
Yeah, I think it was Consensus. Yeah, we were at Consensus. I think they published their spending to a T.
Wow. Okay, didn't know that.
Yeah, they made some mistakes in that spending, but they owned up. They were like, "Hey, we did this." But this way, that would.
I do remember this actually. Now that you bring that up, I do remember this happening.
Yeah,
and I remember also thinking, well, at least they published something.
Yeah, because most of these blockchain foundations, they just stay quiet and they're like, "Hey, we burned through this much money." If you're lucky. Yeah. On what? Like token prices down. No one's building here. Literally, devs do something.
Yeah. Devs do something. And one thing you could do if you're a dev is give Mavryk a follow. I'll say that. And for anyone who's watching, this is a really cool conversation. I'm going to go back. I was like, let me write down 3 or 4 places where I'll come back to. I wrote 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 spots that I'm going to have to go back to in this conversation. Just little bits that were super, super cool just for RWA. It actually makes me want to make RWA content just on a personal level, because that just it's such an easier sell. I remember when I was trying to explain crypto to my father, Bitcoin was easy to sell and RWAs are relatively easy to sell. Everything else, he's like, but isn't that just kind of well, you kind of have to be there to understand, but to you, I'm not gonna be able to explain this. But tokenizing things like this makes sense, to the average person who's not.
You know how hard it is to I'm half Iranian, Persian, really. How hard it is to explain Bitcoin to a bunch of old Persians who work in work in real estate development.
Okay.
But how do I hold a Bitcoin?
Okay, I see.
Can I get one in my hands? And I'm like, well, no, it's completely digital, but this is tangible, right? Okay, it's okay, it's a form of tech that allows you to own a piece of the hotel you're building. Instead of selling it to 10 family offices, you could sell it to 100. Wow. And now you start to have easier entry points.
Yep.
When it's not a $10 million investment, but you can facilitate $1 million investment or $100, right? So all right, the things you wanted to circle back on.
Yeah, I was gonna say I wrote a lot of things down. I'm not gonna be able to circle back on this podcast, but for myself, I'm gonna go back and rewatch the stream. I don't have a piece of paper, so I just wrote them all down on a cardboard piece of paper of all the areas where I'm gonna go back to. Dude, this was a fascinating conversation. Okay, so we do have to bounce to another stream in a few minutes here, but
we can dive into every single little thing that we talked about for its own series almost in a way.
I believe it. And honestly, I think that's probably a good idea for short form content people out there. I think there's a hole in the market. So I made pretty much my whole career before I came to Wolf this past year. was all independent content creation. And so I was just making content on things I thought were impressive, interesting, things like that. And people will be surprised at how many opportunities came from me just posting videos. Because people, if like, for example, if you're interested in RWAs and you are a great content creator, you've got a bunch of things you can offer to a company maybe, but you never put the information out there, or the fact that you know some of these things, they wouldn't know to hire you, even if you're the number one S tier person for this company role. And I found that just posting the content out there actually will create so much opportunity. So everybody I meet, I'm like, all right, so you're an expert in this. Like, where's the content coming out of? Like, my father, super high up in Silicon Valley. I'm like, where's your LinkedIn posts? Like, and he started posting, and they started popping off. And I was like, this is the way. No one's going to know that they want to work with you if you don't put it out there. So for people who are out there, I don't see enough RWA content creators. So that's my call to action to everybody out there. I'm going to do my bit there. But man,
it's Kate, it's funny you mentioned that, because you always get these things where it's like, oh, we need to get these KOLs in. It's like, okay, well, fine. But then it's like, there are so many actual like smart investor KOLs in that way of like guys who talk about how they got dividends and how they leveled up, that like buying a house off like a foreclosure and then remodeling it and flipping it and all that kind of stuff. And the same thing is going to happen with RWAs at some point.
Yeah.
Right. It's about getting this wider exposure. But that's something that you brought up that's really interesting, is that it's not enough. People keep thinking like, oh, they've got the best tech. It's not about best tech. It's about distribution. It's about how can people use this tech to enrich their lives in whatever way. Like, I was too young for this, but like beta was better than VHS, but VHS won.
Wow. That's really interesting there.
Yeah, well, it was because they had the spicy content industry went with VHS instead of beta, but that just happens to be about like they got that distribution. That distribution angle, from whatever industry it was, it doesn't matter, was what drove people to start using this technology. Not for the tech. No one gave a damn about VHS being better than beta. They wanted the content that came across it, and that's all that mattered.
My brain goes to like Netflix and watching movies at home versus going to the theater or Blockbuster. Blockbuster pretty much goes out of business. Theaters were on the verge of going out of business, it felt like, during there for a couple of years. You're right. Like distribution, who can get it into people's hands faster so that their lives are a little bit easier. And in this sense, if you're like, I'd love to invest in real estate, but the cards, I just don't got it. I don't got it like that. This is pretty much that easy avenue. And we just literally walked through on the website. It was beyond simple to get involved. Okay.
Bring value to people's lives. It's that simple. Bring value to people's lives. Like, okay, great. Your blockchain is 0.1 seconds faster than this other person's blockchain. Okay, but what the fuck can I do with it? Like, if you don't put products on it, then who cares?
Man,
I don't know if I should be personalized. Probably not personal.
I was going to say, well, it's okay. I was going to say, I don't know how I'm going to wrap this conversation up, but we're going to have to, and we're going to have to, do a part 2 at some point, or do something here, because this is a really, really cool conversation. Real quick, for anyone who's watching this stream still, if you haven't already, please give them a follow. If you're on YouTube, go below our faces into the description. You can find their websites, and you can find their X, and you can go from there and give them a follow for sure. Man, this was a great conversation, dude. I really, really loved it. Any last thoughts or any call to actions that you want to leave the audience with who's still watching? If there's anything that's coming up that you want to leave us with.
Oh God, I have so many jokes I want to say actually with that one, but I like I told people this entire week, it's like, I'm going to be the most playfully professional person you meet. It's going to be a little bit of both in a way, right?
Yeah.
Really, guys, give Mavryk a follow, give Maven a follow, give Equities a follow. Stay in touch for like everything that we're doing with the potential token sale, IDO, the airdrop campaign that'll be starting soon. Be a part of the community, and Cade's been a big fan of. You can follow me.
Do it.
And then been a big fan of Wolf for a long time, so happy to be here.
I appreciate you spending some time with me. I really enjoyed this conversation. Unfortunately, we have another stream, but I probably could go for 3 more hours with you and do a Joe Rogan type of conversation. So again, thank you so much for coming on. I hope you've
got to do that.
We got to. The Joe Rogan experience on Wolf Financial Edition. That's awesome. Get an RWA conversation rolling here. Okay, everyone, thank you so much for watching. Please give us a like, retweet, quote tweet, tag a friend on the stream. If you're on YouTube, share out the link, let people know. If this blew your mind as much as I did, all the engagement helps. Make sure you give them a follow. And we pretty much have streams and spaces going on every single day here at Wolf. So be sure to give us a follow and follow along if you like that kind of stuff. We'll see you in the next one, fam. Take care. 3